Welcome to Russian History with Dr. Brovkin. Today I'd like to speak about the future of Ukraine as seen in the West, as perceived by the Ukrainians, and as perceived by the Russians based on the discussions that are going on in Russian media. Starting with the West, yesterday the Congress passed 61 billion package to Ukraine. There's huge celebration that this is going to make a difference and that the war will be conducted in Ukraine's favor. Biden and Blinken have recently announced that Ukraine will be in NATO, that Ukraine will be in the European Union, and that in 2025 Ukraine will win after it regroups. And then there's a contradiction. At the same time, they're also saying that Ukraine has to receive desperately needed help because it may lose, and then as soon as it loses, Russia will advance further and conquer all of Europe. So obviously there's no coherent narrative coming from the West. It's all these panicky notions. Either it's gonna lose or victory proclaimed already now, and that it's gonna win. The message to the Europeans, of course, is that they should prepare for war, that the West should give more money, and preferably that the Europeans give more money than the United States, and that it needs more weapons. So it's an obvious message to Putin and to Russia that Europe and the US want escalation. They want to spend more money, to spend more Ukrainian lives in the hope of either stalling or Russian offensive or winning. Now, obviously, my view is that this policy is suicidal for NATO and for the West, because Russia is now outproducing militarily the NATO countries combined. There are thousands of tanks rolling from Russian production lines. And the most important thing, of course, is the cost, because the Americans always approach the thing in terms of cost. You vote 60 billion and the problem is resolved. Well, it ain't so simple, because if we just compare the figures, it becomes obvious that this cannot be sustained in the long run. Now, one F-15, F-35 airplane costs 130 million a piece. Now, the Russian comparable Su-35 and Su-57 costs 10 times less, 13 million. If you compare the Patriot missiles and to the Russian S-300 and S-400, then one American battery costs $1.5 billion, and the Russian one costs 500 million, 3 times less. In other words, the American arms are extremely expensive because the prices are hiked up by the military manufacturers, because they hope to get more money out of Congress. Now, the Russians can outproduce them now in terms of missiles, in terms of the quality of missiles, hypersonic ones, in terms of the number of tanks and aviation. But that's not the point. In other words, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the morale. And if we look at the morale of the Ukrainian forces and Ukrainian society, and now we're moving to the Ukrainian perspective, that seems to be a problem. Number one is that Zelensky's term is coming out in May 21 to its end. There is no legitimate president after that. The elections were cancelled, and the Russians have already announced that they will not recognize a Zelensky government as legitimate after May 21. The second and more serious problem is the low morale in the armed forces of Ukraine and in the society. Well, there are plenty of examples of Ukrainian men running away from mobilization. The recent law passed a few days ago makes it harsh penalties for draft dodgers, and they're caught in the streets, and it's all captured on camera how they're beaten up and thrown into the buses, and then they shipped to the front. And then, of course, the catastrophic casualties of Ukrainian armed forces cannot be hidden anymore. There's a new phenomenon, and that is the desire of Ukrainian soldiers to surrender to the Russians. And then there are these other, they're called spotters, who report to the Russians where military installations are and where there are all kinds of other valuable assets to be bombed are. And the most egregious example of that is that on April 15th, these spotters told the Russians that the French battalion was housed in the city of Slavyansk, and then the missile came, and the reports are that about close to 100, nobody knows exactly how many French forces, French military personnel was hit in the city of Slavyansk. Now, in other words, the mood in Ukraine is slowly turning against the war. Also because the Ukrainians reason like this. We used to be a part of the Soviet Union and it was okay. So what's the big deal? Why should we fight and continue fighting to reach unsustainable victory? Now the others say, well, then there's all these sacrifices. What for all these sacrifices? And the answer to those is that, well, is it better to continue the sacrifices for an aim that cannot be reached rather than stop it now? And then, of course, there's a powerful argument as to life in the territories that used to be Ukraine and now are Mariupol and Lugansk, and life is there is good. It's getting better all the time, and the reconstruction is going on. In other words, Ukrainians or former Ukrainian citizens, now Russian citizens, do not suffer from being once in the past belonging to Ukraine. It's not like they're going to be bombed out like Gaza. It's not like they're going to be deprived of any rights as the citizens of the West Bank. So the Ukrainians have nothing to fear by becoming a part of Russia. Now, so the next point is that the Ukrainian society is not in a hurry to mobilize for further offensives. Now let us move on to the Russian view, which is discussed in many media. Telegram is one of them, the free media that one could express just about anything at all in this debate. Now, the first one, I would group them in several categories. The first one is the mild one, which is these are the proponents of the view that is least offensive to Ukrainians' ambition. Now, all of them, of course, predicated that Ukraine should not be in any case a member of NATO. All of the Russians agree on that. It should not in any way represent any threat to the Russian cities. That is a place from where bombs and missiles and others can fly. Now, within these parameters, the first view is like this: stop the war. Priority is to freeze at the current line, and then Ukraine has to accept no membership in NATO. And that it could potentially be a member of the European Union, but with international guarantees that it's going to be a neutral country, pretty much like Austria today, and the borders could be frozen just as they are now. That's the minimalist position. There's nobody who's ready to accept anything less than that. Now, the critique of that position, of course, that if the people who argue that where's the guarantee that now they say they're not going to be in NATO, and then 10 years from now they change their mind, as Finland did, and then join NATO. So there's got to be some kind of ironclad guarantees to Russian security if there's any rump state of Ukraine that exists. Now, a little harder position, as I call it, plan number 2, is to advance and take all of Novorossiya, which means all of the provinces that speak Russian, where Russian is a native language. And that means pretty much all of Donbass, plus Kharkov, plus Odessa, plus Kherson and Zaporozhye, which is kind of most of the central Ukraine as it is today. Now, the rest of Ukraine, this is where the debate begins. The rest of Ukraine has to be neutral, and that's plan number 2. Now, the third plan is even tougher than that, and that says no, no, no. There's no way we can have this kind of uncertainty as to whether Ukraine would be free to decide and may decide to station some other troops, such as Polish troops or some other troops that are not NATO, but it would still represent a challenge. Moreover, such a Ukraine could always claim in the future that the territories that used to belong to Ukraine were still legally Ukrainian, and therefore that's potentially unacceptable to Russia. So these people say no. If Ukraine is to keep any of its sovereignty at all, it has to be in alliance with Russia. And so these people were saying that the acceptable version would be that the rump Ukraine, after Novorossiya joins Russia, is bound in some kind of alliance with Russia, like Belarus. They would remain an independent country, but with military and economic alliance with Russia. Now, some people say, well, that ain't really an independence, but the response of those to this argument is, well, Germany lives like this. It has no sovereignty. The Americans tell them what to do, have their bases on their territories, are destroying their economy, and the Germans live with it. So why can't Ukraine live under Russian tutelage? This is the plan number 4. Now, the critics of this plan say if this plan goes through, the question remains what to do with Western Ukraine. This is the Carpathian Ukraine, which is the hotbed of the Banderovites, of Ukrainian nationalism. And Putin had indicated a couple of times in his speeches that he doesn't want these people to be in Russia. So what to do with this territory? And again, there's no clear answer from the government or from Putin or from anybody of high authority. There's just a discussion in the media, journalists and political commentators. So there are 2 plans that seem to be versions what to do with this territory. One is to separate it from the core Ukraine, from central Ukraine that could be allied with Russia, into a separate state. And that state could be either traded with the Poles and Hungarians and Romanians, in other words, divided up between them, because there are these minorities, especially the Hungarian and Romanian minorities in this area. And then the argument goes, well, if we just surrender it to them, it will be NATO. What are we getting from that? Well, some people say, okay, well, let them do whatever they want with it, but we're going to get in return, let's trade it with the Poles that they give us land corridor to Kaliningrad. So the deal would be that they get the Western Ukraine and deal with the Banderovite types themselves, who had staged some anti-Polish rallies and who actually massacred the Poles in the 40s. So this plan is going to say, okay, well, let the Poles have it, but we need a land corridor to Kaliningrad, which is a foresty area in the north, not many towns there, so the Poles were not going to lose much if they traded this territory for Carpathian Ukraine. Now, all of these, of course, are just speculations and nothing more. But the overall mood in Russia is that the more Ukrainians shoot long-range missiles into Russian territory, the harder is Russian position that there should not be any Ukraine as independent or any other, because that is a security risk and we cannot take any chances. So therefore, the harder Ukrainian authorities and Zelensky tries to get more missiles and shoot harder and farther into Russia, the more he undermines any chance for the survival of any Ukrainian state at all. And more people are saying we need unconditional surrender. Ukraine will be taken, all of it, and NATO would have to live with it. And that in itself presents huge difficulties for NATO, because the NATO countries in Europe are not ready for a land war with Russia. And if some of them decide to conduct such a war, maybe Macron, maybe Scholz, or maybe somebody else, there will be defectors. There will be countries that say, no, 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 we're not a part of it because we don't want to be bombed by the Russian artillery. So that's where we are. It seems like the West is driving itself into a corner, and the Russians will prevail, maybe even this year. I want to remind you, my dear subscribers, that I have a book from Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin, and the last chapter of this book discusses in great detail the presidency of President Putin and spectacular rise of Russia to the great power status. And the link to the book itself and the publisher is in the description. Please subscribe, please read my book. I'm happy to answer your questions. Until next time.